Welcome everyone to another episode AWS Partners Unplugged. I am your host Igor Alexiev, and as always, we're here to bring you conversation that matter most to the AWS partner ecosystem. Whether you're tuning in on your morning commute or catching up over lunch, we've got a great episode lined up for you today. I am thrilled to welcome Carmen Puccio to the show. Carmen is a senior manager of worldwide tech partner solutions architecture at AWS Specialists and Partners. He's someone who's been at the intersection of technology and media, cloud and containers, and now partners and innovation for a very long time. Carmen recently presented on strategic design wins at the internal AWS event, and today he is here to share these insights with our listeners. Carmen, welcome to the show.
Igor, thank you so much for having me. Big fan of what you and Sri have done with the podcast. Really, it's an honor to be here. Excited to chat today, and hopefully the listeners find it exciting.
Thank you. Well, the honor is, of course, is ours. Before we dive into today's topics, which is all about how we work strategically with partners and what's coming for partners in 2026, I would love for our listeners to get to know you a bit. You've had a pretty fascinating career journey. Can you walk us through how you ended up at AWS and where you are now?
Before I joined AWS, and I always tell the story, I've had essentially two positions in life, right? One here at AWS in a multitude of different positions, which I can go over in a second. And then I spent 15 years over at the Associated Press. And that's where, again, like I've gone through numerous positions, but I really cut my teeth on building large scale systems, dealing with real time data, working with geo dispersed teams and coming up with and solving essentially the infrastructure challenges that helps serve the news to millions if not billions of people around the world. It was an incredible experience. It was where I cut my teeth with learning the AWS cloud, and this is where you learn a lot about reliability, performance when people depend on your systems every single day to get the news real time. When I joined AWS back in 2016, and it's funny we're sitting here talking about it, my 10-year anniversary is this Saturday. I joined the partner team, and I specifically joined to work with our migration acceleration program. A lot of folks know it by the MAP acronym. So it was how do we basically get customers to move workloads over to AWS at scale. And I spent about 2 years roughly working within the partner network, both ISV and consulting in the migration space. I then moved over to work with the container team in a similar capacity. And at the time, containers was the cool kid on the block, right? Like everybody wanted to talk about, how do I think about, modernizing my technology stack? How do I think about like the optimal footprint? And there was a great opportunity for our ISV partners to plug into that motion as we were launching services like EKS. So I served as both a principal architect inside of the container space within the APN. And then I moved over into a leadership role, I want to say roughly around 2019. But overall, like I've had a ton of experience, working with partners on various different technology stacks in my time here at AWS, both from a horizontal and from a vertical standpoint. And it's been a great learning journey. So again, two roles or two companies, but multitude of positions across those two companies.
That's a great foundation and quite a journey from Associated Press to AWS. And I can see how the scale and the reliability mindset translates perfectly into your current role. Now you're leading the worldwide tech partner solutions architecture team. What does your day look like day to day?
Lots of doc reads here at Amazon. No, in all seriousness, no, it's really about bridging the gap between our partners and AWS services that they're building on. Right, we want them to essentially be well positioned, make sure that they're solving customer use cases, working backwards from where we're seeing signals, and together go to market, making sure that the things that are building or the services that they're offering are the right fit for where our customers have needs. So my team works both, across some of our biggest and largest ISVs, or we call it technology partners around the globe. But we'll also sometimes swoop in, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, I'm sure, with our consulting partners and that better together story across technology partners and consulting partners. But the point here is we're helping them create validated, production ready solutions that drive real value for our customers. And that's why, we're here to talk about what we do and how we think about goaling our teams in that design win category. But at the end of the day, as we're building capabilities with our partners, we want to make sure that we're putting the best foot forward together with and through them.
Let's just dive into it. AWS partners in AWS, we are in a situation of symbiosis, right? We want to benefit our partners, and partners need to benefit AWS. And one of these kind of building blocks is a design win, or we sometimes call them integration. Let's talk about these. What kind of integrations do you see? What are they? What are the examples maybe that you liked and resonated in the market?
I'll go at its highest level and I can give some examples, right? So, at its core, the design win is, to my point, when we build something that's real with a partner. And the point here is it's not a sandbox, right? It's a validated, production ready solution that on top of AWS that opens doors to go solve real problems, right, for our customers. The thing that we're thinking about when we're taking these solutions to market, besides working backwards from the customer need, is to figure out like where can our partners be complementary, right? So there's lots of examples over the years as to like how we're thinking about making our partners as that 1P 3P better together story on top of any given AWS service. But typically, like that is the entry point, is when a partner builds with and complements an AWS service and then brings it into that holistic offering. Simple of example, and it's actually, again, if you think about like the procurement mechanism, and this goes back a little bit, but this was something that I personally had my hand in. When we think about customers that are running, say, EKS workloads, and again, I'll talk about containers because that's a big piece of my background. But when they're running EKS workloads, one of the things that they need to do is they need to, besides install partner software, you need to think about their procurement model, right? So what better place than the AWS marketplace? And working through the AWS marketplace, the team thought about how can we build design win integrations where customers not only can discover and procure from marketplace, but more importantly, install. So you can go see, we call them add-ons, right? You can go look in the ECAS documentation. But partners like Datadog went in and thought about like, how can I go in and be complementary to the EKS stack and provide all the value that I would offer as a an observability or even a security partner, because they breach into that territory as well in a 1P 3P model, but it's all streamlined. And when we talk about the design win, that's where the partner solutions architect is knee deep in the weeds with their engineering teams, the go-to-market teams, the service teams, to make sure that they're building the right thing so it doesn't land and it becomes shelfware. It becomes a real, usable, tangible artifact. So hopefully that's a good segue, and that's a good baseline as to how we think about what design wins are and where we've seen some cool examples. But we have countless, right? We do these day in, day out, all year long for as long as I've been here.
That makes sense. And maybe we can contrast it. What if like a partner is doing it in isolation? Traditionally, they've built on AWS, right? If they're doing it on their own, what would be different? And that kind of highlights the value of what we do.
Yeah, I think this goes back to where, again, like we want to make sure that we're working very closely with our go to market teams, our alliances teams at the partners to make sure that they're not doing it in a vacuum. Because again, we have the ability to do a couple of things. And like I think about this from a framework perspective. The first thing you got to think about is, one, we're going to come to the table where we see signals. And again, it's a conversation. They're going to have an opinion in this space as well. But when you're doing that, we're agreeing on there's a market segment here. And time to market is super important, because when you're co-building with AWS, you're not figuring it out on your own. You're working together so we can get you to market quicker, and it's a real business need. And this is where, again, like, there's that second layer, and it's that AWS validation aspect of things, right? So if you think about, what we want to do when we put our partners up inside the marketplace, right? Or in my prior example, when we were talking about the EKS add-on example, but any example, there's a concept of like well architected here. And if you're working on your own, you can go comb countless AWS articles, blog posts, white papers, videos. And, in the world of AI, this is definitely easier because you get a little bit quicker access to that data. But there's still the AWS solutions architect that brings that ability to look around corner. And they also have the relationships with the internal teams that can help the partner ideate faster, right? So that validation and that technical expertise is another piece of the pillar. And then the third part is, again, like, we're talking about the revenue here, or the revenue models. And these aren't necessarily meant to be small experiences. They're meant to drive real business. So, making sure that, we're thinking across those three things, it actually, brings itself to the fourth one, which is, hey, if this is of interest to you, we have partner solutions architects that are aligned to particular partners or aligned to potentially a vertical or a horizontal as a whole, where we can think about where we can be complementary and help you along your journey.
So just to recap, we get faster time to market, we get AWS validated credibility of the solutions, and we also have an established way to get your revenue, your partner revenue at scale, and also we get support throughout the process. I think this is a compelling value proposition. It's not just build it and they will come. It's a structured partnership where AWS is invested in the outcome along with the partner.
Yeah, that's correct. And again, this has been, you know, evolved on for the years that I've been here. But the point being here is, we're not just launching solutions with partners. We're targeting those highest impact innovations across, our strategic pillars and working together and with and through them.
Yes, and I know you've been at the GPS in, I think it was in Seattle, right? And met with many partners, and one of the biggest pillars is generative AI and agentic AI. Let's dig into these pillars, and maybe we'll start with generative AI and agentic AI. And it is one of most popular topics right now. Tell us what's happening. What have you heard from partners?
Yeah, it is the most popular topic right now. And again, there was a ton of buzz at GPS, just like it was at all of our other events that are public facing. The point here is that we're thinking about it goes back to that. How do I make it simple, right? How do I make it easy to discover and procure, and where do our partners fit in this agentic story? And I think this is where there's a ton of momentum, and the team is hyper focused on the AI agents and tools category within AWS Marketplace. So if you think about what our teams are doing right now across both business and tech, we're enabling our partners to deploy and customize and scale AI agents directly on AWS. And when you think about the Agent Core model, which became generally available back in October 2025, Agent Core gives developers a complete managed platform to build, deploy, operate AI agents with tools, data, and memory without managing the underlying infrastructure. But that wouldn't necessarily be complete if we weren't thinking about the partner complementary story to that, right? So again, the team that I run and the teams that we work with, we're making sure that we're working to fulfill that marketplace with as many solutions as possible based off of where business needs or signals exist in the market, so we can bring that holistic 1P, 3P story to the market together.
October 25. I can't believe it's been only almost like 6, 7 months. It feels like it's been years since Agent Core was out. Do you happen to know adoption numbers?
Yeah. So it is amazing. And I mean, even just thinking about the journey in the last, 6+ months and the access to the tools and the capabilities that we have, it's mind blowing, right? But within the first 5 months of preview, I believe the Agent Core SDK was downloaded over 2 million times. And we have, ISVs like Workday and organizations like the PGA Tour that are already building production solutions. And we've also expanded our AI competency program, which, to the partners that are listening, that tremendously, popular go-to-market program run by one of our peer teams. It's the program that had recently launched a new agentic AI category to make sure that we're validating partners, delivering solutions using Agent Core and things like Strands agents. And then just within the last month, we launched the Partner Central agents powered by Agent Core to help automate co-selling workflows.
That's a lot of momentum. What about Kiro ID? We've been both to reInvent. You've seen the cool setup they had. They made a lot of splash about Kiro. What are you hearing from partner about Kiro?
Yeah, super popular. To your point, it just launched preview last July. What makes this unique and where it's super cool, and again, when I have the time to build, I love this concept. It's the concept of spec-driven development, right? So structured requirements, design, documents to essentially guide that AI-driven development. So instead of obviously the ad hoc prompts, you're using steering agents for real context. And then for partners, and this is where we're pushing the needle again. This means, partners, they can create dev tools that bundle best practices across, design, development, deployment, and observability, all within the same holistic experience.
And then, of course, we have AWS Transform. That's another service.
Yeah.
I think it's particularly interesting to partners with enterprise customers that looking to modernize, right?
Yeah, for sure. And if if I would have had Transform back in my early days within the migration program, that would have been the magic bullet we were all chasing. But this is the evolution of tech, right? This is why it's super exciting and super cool. But AWS Transform, to those that don't know, it's the first agentic AI service designed for large scale enterprise migration and modernization. So targeting Windows, .NET workloads, VMware environments, mainframe applications. And yeah, this is where the results speak for themselves. So, reducing modernization timelines by up to 4 times compared to manual approaches. And back in the day, that was the lift and shift approach, right? And for VMware migrations specifically, we've seen acceleration of up to 80 times. So at reInvent 2025, we added full stack Windows modernization capabilities that deliver up to 5 times faster modernization with 70% cost reduction. And partners working on mainframe modernization are seeing a 30 to 40% cost savings through multi-agent collaboration. The point here is, our partners are leveraging Transform to not only just execute the migrations themselves, but more importantly, they're building on the framework. So we've had partners like Pega, for example, with their blueprints that are thinking about how can they be complementary to Story. So if you tie it all the way back to the general theme that I'm hitting on here is how do we think about these first party tools and services and what value do the partners bring so we can go to market together to go solve these problems. In this case, it's how do I go modernize and migrate, like legacy systems to AWS cloud in a better together story. But super cool capability. I just wish it would have existed when I was an SA trying to do this in the liquid chip world.
Never too late, Carmen. You
Yeah.
can still work with Kiro and Transform. It's so easy to do things nowadays. But let's switch gears a little bit. I mean, generative AI, we can talk forever about it, and agentic AI as well. But we also have a marketplace, AWS Marketplace, and it's very important to our partners, and it's evolving. I just had an episode recorded with Matt Chinchishin, but there have been some significant changes here. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, I think the one that I'm the most excited about and the one that, changes fundamentally how we think about working with partners is the multi-product solution story. So AWS Marketplace, if you missed the announcement, it now supports a solution-centric procurement model. So where partners can bundle multiple products and services tailored towards specific industries and customer use cases. So again, like the simple example of a single ISV works with an ISV or with an SI. One of them is the seller of record, and that is the solution. But sometimes it could be more than that. There's multiple things that come together to go solve that line of business problem. And that goes all the way back to like customers asking for, hey, I need X. This is an opportunity for partners to work together and encompass their holistic story together and take that to market. There's already over 50 multi-product solutions available today. And to my point, the beauty of this here is the customers work with that singular partner who coordinates everything. And they complete that one transaction covering all the products, getting that unified view. But each product still creates its own agreement for independent management. So again, working towards that, how do I solve a line of business problem at a much higher level? Super excited about that particular launch, and that is something that the SA team that works within my organization, they're hyper focused on this year.
I've seen a lot of interest from managed service providers, consulting partners, and infrastructure partners where they can package their offerings with the services, and it simplifies enormously from a customer perspective.
Yeah, it really does. And then there's the other one too. I would be remiss not to mention. Another one we're hyper focused on this year again is the partner revenue measurement, right? So launched that one in January 2026, and this is the big motion that we're working with and for our partners because it gives them the essentially the visibility into how their solutions actually impact AWS service consumption. So whether partners are tagging resources with their marketplace product code to quantify and measure the AWS revenue of their solution, or if they're using the recently launched user agent string, where you're just simply encompassing, in the user agent string, regardless of the SDK you use, whether it's Python or Node or again, my old days of .NET, right? They're basically encapsulating their product code at the API level when using the SDK to measure consumption without that resource level tagging. Point being is to be able to provide visibility into consumption, right? So super valuable and something that again we're hyper focused on in 2026.
So partners can finally see the full picture of the value they're driving, quantitative picture, I would say, right? That's huge for building their business case within AWS.
Correct. And if you think about it, there's the three architectural patterns, whether it's the partner account themselves, the customer account, hybrid approach. The point here is it works across all three, regardless of how the solution is deployed. But to your point, being able to drive visibility on both sides, right? So that way we can understand the value that they are driving at a granular level, and they can also look and introspect it themselves.
And switching gears again, we have a lot to cover. So we also focus on technical differentiation and regional expansion with our partners. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, this is why we're a global team, right? We're always thinking about, region expansions. AWS, as they're launching new regions, new capabilities, new services within those regions. If we think about our value that we bring to the table when we work with partners, it's how do we go deeper and how do we call it co-engineer? How do we drive co-engineering with those partners to basically fulfill that broader worldwide remit, right? And then how, more importantly, like how do we make it easier? Right. So, again, you may have seen the marketplace SaaS quick launch or some of the things that we've done recently with the AWS service launch partnerships. Point being is this is where we're building in direct collaboration with those engineering teams as those services spin up or as those regions spin up. And when a partner co-engineers with us, they're not just integrating with that service, right? They're helping us shape the story. So again, it's that better together. And this is where, we've seen some really cool results with the IAM temporary delegation launch, which I believe was a reInvent launch as well, which accelerates the onboarding and it simplifies the management for products as they integrate with AWS customer accounts. You think about like the bootstrapping experience. How do we make that simpler? How do we make that more streamlined and consistent? That is that IAM temp story.
And then the fourth pillar you mentioned already, regional expansion and data sovereignty. I know it's big in EMEA.
This one, again, super important, just like all the others. But the point being here is this is the global expansion story. So how can we focus our time and efforts from a global team perspective on accelerating partner and customer adoption on new AWS infrastructure events? So for many customers, especially in regulated industries, data sovereignty, for example, is critical requirement. Partners who are ready to deploy in those regions from day one, we want to make sure we're working with them so they can have that competitive advantage as those regions spit up. So that's another value add that the SA team from a worldwide perspective does when we work with our partners on that front.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about having a great solution. It's about having it available where customers need it, in the region they need it, closer to the customers, following the local regulations. That brings a lot of value to the customers and partners. And now we're coming up on time. I want to make sure we leave our listeners with some concrete next step. Our listeners, primarily, hopefully, partners. And if your partner listening to this, what should you do tomorrow morning? Listen to podcast, of course,
Yeah.
but besides that,
Yeah. No, so I think the takeaway here, right, is, first, make sure you're working with your PSA and PDM teams on a regular basis, right? We want to make sure you're working with them to co-build the right solutions. Our shared focus here is customer success and making sure we're driving measurable business value. And those teams are your direct hotline into the design win story, the go-to-market story around the things we build. Secondly, make sure you're leveraging your partner plan as that foundation for go-to-market acceleration. We've been building these plans. They're iterative throughout the year, obviously. But the point being is like we went through a concerted exercise early part of the year. Think about, how do we work with our partners? How do we make sure we're driving momentum? And what should that engine, essentially look like? How do we work together to basically drive impact together?
and I suspect there's a third pillar or a third missing thing, like known
Yeah.
unknowns.
Yeah, it's AWS, it's Amazon. We want to hear from you. We want to work backwards from where the problems are. So I want to know, the team wants to know what's missing. So if there are key topics, if there are priorities or use cases that aren't yet reflected in the things that we're talking about, again, this is a partnership, right? In our focus areas, we want to hear from you. So the community, in my opinion, worked best, and I've seen it work best in my time here when it's a two-way conversation. The strategic pillars that I've outlined, obviously I'm sure they resonate with you. Like every partner is talking about AI, but maybe there's stories that, yet we're not thinking of that you think might be something that's worth considering, that we should think about and how we can work together and take that thing to market. So the point being here is, the things that I've outlined, whether it's Gen AI, agentic AI, marketplace, technical differentiation, regional expansion, there's a bunch of sub stories in there. And there might even be a higher level top story. The point being is these are the things that we are focused on. And this is where we believe the highest impact will be because our customers are asking for it. But at the same time, it's equal voice. And we want to hear from you because our partners are very close, if not closer to some of the teams, the SAs to our customers, and their perspective is tremendously, tremendously valuable. So we want to hear from you. We want your feedback and looking forward to all the future conversations.
Well, Carmen, this has been a fantastic conversation. I love how you laid out the framework, the pillars, how we work with partners, what's important to us, what's important to partners.
Thank you very much. And I just want to add, besides, thank you very much for having me today. And thanks to the listeners today. If anyone wants to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Carmen Puccio. I'm always happy to chat about how we can build something great together. I know we're coming up the summit season. I'll be in Toronto, DC, and New York. Feel free to ping me if you want to chat and you want to meet up, have a coffee. Looking forward to the connects. But I appreciate the time, appreciate the audience, and thanks again.
Wonderful. And as always, if you have any question, topic suggestion, want to be a guest on the show, drop us a line, leave a comment, subscribe to podcast, leave us a review, share episode with a colleague who is navigating the partner ecosystem. Until next time, this is Igor Alexiev, and you've been listening to AWS Partners Unplugged. Keep building, keep innovating. We'll see you in the next episode.